We have received more than 30 complaints from members of the public. We have received concerns from members of the taxi industry, from operators. Safe to say, members of the consumers are quite happy. There are some drivers who say we don't want the increase, and is there a requirement for us to calibrate and get new fares. There are some who have said that we'll wait when the final authorization is done, then we will do the calibration accordingly. There are some who says some who have already lined up, got the calibration done, and got the charges included. And I've met with the Fiji Taxi Association. We had announced that we'll go out and do further consultation with other members of the industry, and we'll continue to do so. Of course, there has been mixed reactions, and different people, depending on who they are, will either be happy or not happy. Just to ascertain whether their happiness has a basis, or it's just a matter of they wanted more, or they wanted the decision to go their way. The FCCC, being the consumer protection enforcement agency and the regulator, is not here to please people. We are here to do what is correct for the industry. And in doing so, we follow a very scientific methodology in assessing what the fares ought to be. And that is applicable to any industry that we regulate. Our role in this was to determine fares. We have put in an interim charge. The changes are to the flagpole and the waiting charge. I'll go on to explain what the flagpole, waiting charge, and per kilometer drop is. We have set maximum fares, so that must be clear. Maximum as in the price ceiling. Anybody is free to charge any amount below that. If a particular taxi operator wants to drive his taxi for free tomorrow, they are more than welcome to do so. If they want to do it at 50% of what the maximum rates are, they are also free to do so. If they want to abide by the decision and they want to charge at the maximum rate, again they are free to do so. We have regulated or set maximum charges for the bus industry. There's a company out in Ba, Fiji Transport, that came back to us and said, I will not take in the 36% increase that's given, I will not charge the maximum fares. Some companies have come in and said, on a particular route, I will not charge fares on a particular stage. So again, there needs to be clarification that we set the maximum rate. And there is a choice for people whether they want to take the maximum rate or not. The concern I got from some members of that industry was this thing that they refer to as spoiling the rate. Now we are a competition commission. There's nothing such as spoiling the rate. In fact, the whole notion of spoiling the rate is an anti-competitive conduct called price fixing itself. And the FCCC is quite concerned when people make those kind of statements. Now in our assessment, we considered that setting increases in flagpole and waiting charges was the best approach that meets our legislative objectives as well as the requirements to give a relief to the taxi industry. Given the current and future uncertainties to do with the economic circumstances, the change in commodity pricing such as fuel, the Russia-Ukraine war, the post-effects of the COVID pandemic on both the passenger fare as well as the upkeep of the industry, we sought to increase the flagpole. Now, one of the things that we must say is we had made 2 rounds of call for submission. Right? The first one was in May, on 19th of May, and the second one was 6th of July. Taxi industry has more than 7,000 taxi permits that's issued, even more number of consumers that commute, as well as people who are dependent on this industry. A total of 36 submissions were received, some by industry associations. When we met with the Fiji Taxi Association, that gave a rough estimate that they have about 3,500 members. We posed the first question to them whether they consulted all their members before arriving at their submission. We pointed out that their submission was very poor. In fact, it was a 4-page letter outlining their desire to have an increase in taxi fares. Such a submission does not do justice to the taxi industry. As I pointed out in my previous press statement, that there are so many other issues affecting the industry, one being driver welfare that was totally missed. Part of the submission where they sought increase did not really correspond or give details of what sample size they used to arrive at that figure. So it was just a one figure that they used, which was I think 15 cents per kilometer increase. Now, for ease of reference, that basically means a 50% increase that they were seeking. We have no idea whether FTA members provided submissions to the association, and the association compiled it and sent it to us, and whether what engine size, what vehicle size, what geographical location was selected to come up with the calculation for these rates. As I had outlined earlier, that FCCC will work with different divisions and different towns and cities, the operators in there, to come up with a fare structure that corresponds with the economic realities on the ground. We have communicated our disappointment to the industry with the level of advancement in the industry. In fact, the thing that I pointed out is, if my father, who used to use taxis, sits in a taxi today, he won't find any difference from how the taxi industry was back then and now, except probably instead of Mark II cars, you'll be sitting in a hybrid car. That's technological advancement that has just been brought about by the automobile industry. So what really has the taxi industry done? If you go to other developed jurisdictions, you will have, if you use ride shares in other jurisdictions such as Uber, you'll find that the level of service is where they compete. In fact, all businesses compete in at least two different things. One is, of course, cost leadership, right, where you can compete based on pricing, and second is on product differentiation. And when the product is homogeneous in nature, or it's the same product, there must be a point of differentiation. Some people in Fiji tend to have a better music system in their car. Right? That's an example of product differentiation. Having well air-conditioned cars, in some taxis you'll find fully air-conditioned. Those things become point of differentiation. We need to see the industry as a whole transition from a very primitive way of providing service to moving and providing service that provides some point of differentiation. In fact, there should be discussions on whether there should be provision of Wi-Fi services, because we live in a digital age. There should be provision of other things when you undertake travel, especially if it's for longer distance. Typically for ride shares, now we are not saying that the taxi industry has to do this, but these are some considerations that the taxi industry needs to put when asking for an increase in price. Because if Fijian consumers are asked to pay for an increase in price, they should expect a higher level of service. The Taxi Association and other operators currently are using technology as an excuse to ask for a higher waiting charge. And some of the queries that we've really received from members of the media is that the 18 cents waiting charge cannot be calibrated. That is false. It can be calibrated, but it will take about 6 weeks, and the calibrators will require to send the software back or to get a software upgrade, which costs them about $5,000 to $6,000. So the solution that both the Fiji Taxi Association, the calibrators, and some taxi operators have is why shouldn't FCCC just increase the charge to 20 cents, which is just a difference of 2 cents. Whole week I have been answering various phone calls and talking to different people who have proposed exactly the same thing. In fact, we've been advised that one of the calibrators has gone ahead and started setting the charge on 10 cents per 30 seconds. I must remind everybody that the waiting charge kicks in after a minute, and the charge is 18 cents. If for some technological purposes the industry is unable to cash in on it, that is the problem of the taxi industry. The Fijian public will not be made to pay additional 2 cents just because the technology requires a further 5,000 upgrade. Now let's talk numbers, right? 2 cents may seem a very limited or very small amount, but it's 2 cents. An average taxi, and this was confirmed by the president of the Taxi Association, does about 15 to 20 trips in a day. It was also confirmed by our groundwork that on an average 15 to 20 trips. Now assume 50% of the people taking these taxis incur waiting charges. Right? So they go and they get waiting charges. That's 2 cents by 10 trips a day. Right? which is about 20 cents. 20 cents by about 7,000 permits is $1,400 per day. By 365 days a year, that's about $500,000, $511,000. Why should the Fijian public be inconvenienced and made to pay an additional 500,000 annually if the taxi industry has not upgraded their technology or has not been ready for a charge of 18 cents? This will not happen. There will be no changes, and anybody that is, any of the calibrators that has done this, we are currently investigating them and will take them to task. We will make an example out of these people who are trying to hoodwink and profiteer of the Fijian people. The FCCC will remain steadfast in its commitment to protect Fijians. It's not about just 2 cents. It's about fairness. And when we discussed the numbers with the taxi industry, they could not dispute the numbers. In fact, the other issue that people have raised is it's only a 50 cents increase. Ladies and gentlemen, it's not only a 50 cents increase. A taxi will take 15 to 20 trips, which means $7.50 to $10 extra income per day. If you compare this with the increase in fuel cost and the different vehicle size that they're using, if you're talking about a hybrid car, and let's say Toyota, you're looking at an average 3.4 to 5 liter of fuel consumption per 100 kilometers. Okay? And if you're looking at an inefficient vehicle such as a Crown, which is a 2 liter vehicle, which is about 8.8 liters, the average charge that we've authorized more than adequately compensates for this increase in fuel cost. And the global situation is yielding a different result. From September onwards, we will start to experience a slight decline in fuel prices. What happens then? So it is quite important to understand that the FCCC exists for fairness. It is also important for people in the taxi industry, whether you're a driver, you're a passenger, you're a calibrator, or you're a taxi operator, you need to understand that the rates that are set has to be fair on all parties. And in this instance, just asking for 2 cent increase in waiting charge because it makes life easy for somebody, because they don't have to incur an additional $5,000 cost, is shameful. That's never going to happen on my watch. We also questioned the Taxi Association as to why they did not reflect other issues of that's affecting the industry. So he said, instead of complaining that the calibration charges are high, why doesn't the association use its bargaining power? You've got 3,500 members in the association, according to them. Why can't the association then go and talk to all the operators and say, we will get all our members to use you as the calibrator if you give us a better rate. We understand that the market has brought itself to a rate of $50 per calibration. We went back and saw that these rates were about $15 in 2009. We also adjusted for CPI. Our calculation yielded that if we had adjusted for all increases in cost from 2009 onwards, and if the profitability remained constant, that price should have been around $20 to $25. The question that the calibrators need to answer, which they will in the very immediate future to FCCC, is why such an exorbitant increase. FCCC has already served notice to all these calibrators and will be investigating why such exorbitant charges have been put in place. We also discussed a wide range of issues with the Taxi Association, and the meeting was quite fruitful. And of course we will go in the future and work on a taxi industry framework. For ease of reference for everybody that is listening in, a flag fall is the starting charge when you sit in a taxi. As someone hires the taxi, a starting charge will be shown on the taxi meter as you sit. This charge is known as the flag fall charge. A drop charge or the running charge is the charge that adds on every 100 meters that the taxi moves. This charge is dependent on the distance you travel. Currently, one drop is 10 cents per 100 meter. Therefore, if you travel 500 meters, then the meter adds 5 drops, which is equal to 50 cents running charge. And waiting time is when the taxi is hired. It's put on wait by a predetermined time, and in this case, it's 1 minute. If the taxi does not move for a complete minute, a charge of 18 cents, which has been authorized now, should kick in. Therefore, the scenario that is applicable during traffic waits and traffic lights or higher taxis waiting at supermarkets, it really depends on how long the taxi is parked and stationary and is not moving. If the wheels move within that 60 seconds or a minute, the time resets. So that is the waiting charge. There is another issue that I would like to address with members of the media. I have received a lot of queries where reference has been made to some members of the public reporting breaches, or some commuters seeing some taxi drivers charge a different rate. And all of this were in relation to breaches of the FCCC Act. And if members of the media are receiving any complaints, I implore you to get details of these breaches, because it is only the specific conduct that we can investigate. We can make statements on the general conduct, but specifically we want to be able to investigate them. So when we see comments or questions from you coming in saying some members of the public, some commuters, or some people have highlighted this to us, please tell us who these some people are. Right? And we hope they are not fictitious. Right? We have that level of trust with the journalists that you will provide such information to us. So if you are able to provide such information, please do send them across so we can investigate them. You have a duty of care to the Fijian people as well. And if you know that somebody is breaking the law, please ensure that it is reported to the relevant authority. We always say this to people who go and post out things on blog sites or social media. We say, if you go to RC Manubai and you ask for bread, you're not going to get it. That doesn't mean they are bad business. It's just because they are not in the line of selling bread. So if you want your complaint to be addressed, please ensure you're addressing at the right forum. And if you as members of the media come across any complaints, please highlight it to us. There's one more issue I think to do with calibration of meters. As I've said, FCCC has put a maximum price. The requirement for calibration is a requirement put in place by the LTA to ensure that nobody tampers with the meter, and that requirement has been put in place for a reason. So while we have authorized an increase, anybody that wants to charge the new rates, you need to get it calibrated, and LTA has provided guidance in the media about that already. Please follow those guidance.